Welcome to the Restitutor Orbis channel. Thank you for joining me today.
There is no sanctuary.
Unacceptable.
You mean nobody's ever been renewed?
The question has been answered.
Question. Do I get my 4 years back?
Today we'll be looking at Logan's Run in our Old World in Tartaria in the Movies Review. So let's jump right into this, looking at the mainstream account of Logan's Run. I first saw Logan's Run when I was about 7 years old. I may have seen it in the theaters when I was 7 years old. I may have watched it on VHS. I may have seen it on DVD. It's not really important. I saw it when I was young. Logan's Run is a 1976 American science fiction action film, interesting classification, directed by Michael Anderson and starring Michael York, Jenny Agutter, Richard Jordan, Roscoe Lee Brown, Farrah Fawcett, and Peter Ustinov. Oh, yeah, we've got a few things to say about Peter later. The screenplay was by David Zelig Goodman, is based on the 1967 novel Logan's Run by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson. And there are a lot of differences between the movie and the novel, including the age which Last Day happens at. It depicts a utopian/dystopian future society on the surface revealed as a dystopia where the population and the consumption of resources are maintained in equilibrium by killing everyone who reaches the age of 30. The story follows the actions of Logan 5, a Sandman who has terminated others who have attempted to escape death and is now faced with termination himself. Produced by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, the film uses only the novel's two basic premises, that everyone must die at a set age, and that Logan and his companion Jessica attempt to escape while being chased by another Sandman named Francis, who is also Logan's best friend. After aborted attempts to adapt the novel, story changes were made, including raising the age of Last Day from 21 to 30 and introducing the idea of carousel for eliminating 30-year-olds. Its filming was marked by special effects challenges in depicting carousel and innovative use of holograms and wide-angle lenses. And visually, this is a very unique movie to this day. The film won a Special Academy Award for its visual effects and 6 Saturn Awards, including Best Science Fiction Film. A spin-off TV series aired in 1977 to 1978 on CBS for 14 episodes. And the less I say about that, probably the better. Plot. In the year of the city 2274, the remnants of human civilization live in a sealed city contained beneath a cluster of geodesic domes, a utopia run by a computer that takes care of all aspects of life, including reproduction. Sound familiar? The citizens live a hedonistic lifestyle, but to prevent overpopulation, everyone must undergo the rite of carousel when they reach the age of 30. There, they are killed under the guise of being renewed. To track this, each person is implanted at birth with a life clock crystal in the palm of the left hand that changes color as they get older and begins blinking as they approach their last day. Most residents accept this chance for rebirth, but those who do not and attempt to flee the city are known as runners. An elite team of policemen known as Sandmen, outfitted in predominantly black uniforms with a little gray stripe across the chest, are assigned to pursue and terminate runners as they try to escape. Logan 5 and Francis 7 are both Sandmen. After terminating a runner to whose presence they were alerted during a carousel rite, Logan finds an Ankh among his possessions. Later that evening, he meets Jessica 6, a young woman also wearing an Ankh pendant. Logan takes the Ankh to the computer, which tells him that it is a symbol for a secret group whose members help the runners find Sanctuary, a mythic place where they will be safe to live out the rest of their lives. Logan learns that the Sandmen have lost 1,056 runners this way. The computer instructs Logan to find Sanctuary and destroy it, a mission which it codenames Procedure 033-03. That's true, it's not made up. Which he must keep secret from the other Sandmen. Then the computer changes the color of his life clock to flashing red, suddenly making him 4 years closer to carousel. Scared, he asks if the 4 years will be restored to him when his mission is completed, but receives no response. In order to escape this, Logan is now forced to become a runner. Logan meets Jessica and explains his intention to run. They meet with the underground group that leads them to the periphery of the city. Logan learns that the Ankh symbol is actually a key that unlocks an exit from the city. They come out onto a frozen cave, with Francis following closely behind. In the cave, they meet Box, a robot designed to capture food for the city from the outside. Logan discovers to his horror that Box also captures escaped runners and freezes them for food. Before Box can freeze Logan and Jessica, they escape, causing the cave to collapse on the robot. Not exactly. Many inaccuracies with this plot, but that's alright, we'll cover them in the analysis. Once outside, Logan and Jessica notice that their life clocks are no longer operational. They see the sun for the first time and discover that the remains of human civilization have become a wilderness. They explore an old, seemingly abandoned city which was once Washington, D.C. In the ruins of the United States Senate chamber, they discover an elderly man living with many cats. His appearance is a shock to them, since neither ever seen anyone over the age of 30. The old man recounts what he remembers about what happened to humanity outside the city, and Logan realizes that sanctuary has always been a myth. However, Francis has followed them, and he and Logan fight. Logan fatally wounds Francis. As he dies, Francis sees that Logan's life clock is now clear and assumes Logan is renewed. Logan and Jessica persuade the old man to return to the city with them as proof that life exists outside the domed city. Leaving the man outside, the two enter the city via an underwater tunnel and try to convince everyone that carousel is a lie and unnecessary. The two are captured by their Sandmen and taken to the computer, which interrogates Logan about procedure 033-03 and asks if he has completed his mission. Logan insists there is no sanctuary. What he has found was old ruins, exposed, an old man, and that the missing runners were all frozen. These answers are not accepted by the computer, even after scanning Logan's mind, and the computer overloads, causing the city's systems to fail violently and release the exterior seals. And again, that's not entirely correct either. We'll get to it. Logan, Jessica, and the other citizens flee the ruined city. Once outside, the citizens see the old man, the first human they have met who is older than 30, proving that they can, indeed, live their lives much longer. This is a remarkable science fiction film. There was never really a movie made like it before, and I don't think there'll ever be a movie made like it since. So let's do our deep dive analysis and see what it tells us about connections to the old world and Tartaria. So the film opens sometime in the 23rd century. The survivors of war, overpopulation, and pollution are living in a great domed city, sealed away from the forgotten world outside. Here in an ecologically balanced world, mankind lives only for pleasure, freed by the servo mechanisms which provide everything. There's just one catch. Life must end at 30 unless reborn in the fiery ritual of carousel. What a title card. You know, that opening sentence there almost reads like they could be describing the 19th century. In any event, there's questions: is this movie really the future? Or is this the past? Or could it be both? And that's what makes it a very unique movie, is that the way it's depicted, it legitimately could be both. Although later in the movie they make it very clear it is indeed the future. We see these events that seem to repeat in various accounts of our history and our mythology. Just something interesting to consider with the movie. And we start with amazing views of the geodesic domes. And this is the Dome City in the 23rd century. Something interesting to consider is there was a plan to put a geodesic dome over New York City. And also in the exploration of Towers of Bologna, which John Levi did very effectively, I might add, there's depictions of what appear to be a geodesic dome over the city. And there's lots of statements about how domes still apply. So just something interesting to think about when they show this domed city. And that's how the film begins, with numerous views showing you just how large the domed city really is. Exterior views. And then you move to interior views, where you see how incredibly beautiful and well laid out this city is. And to be fair, it does have what appears to be some inspiring architecture. We see some pyramids, we see some cone shapes, and some variants, along with trees and beauty. So on the outside looking in, we see that there's still life outside the domes, but then on the inside, we see that there's life on the inside, and it's very beautiful, and it looks very orderly, it's very clean, and it's very pleasant to live in. All depicted in a simple opening shot. The first scene of characters involves Logan 5, the Sandman, and the principal protagonist, portrayed brilliantly by Michael York, wonderful actor, and you might be more familiar with him as portraying Basil Exposition in the Austin Powers movies. He's at a nursery, and he's visiting what he believes to be one of his offspring, although the dialogue makes it clear that the people in this city do not know their offspring. And in fact, his best friend asks him, well, do you know who his seed mother was? And he says, no, of course not. I'm curious. I'm not perverted. And so you quickly get an idea of what the concept of the city is all about. And depicted here, you see the life clock, which is implanted in every left hand of every resident of the city. The life clock that tells them how long they have from their birth to their death when it flashes red and they have to report to carousel, or face the consequences of summary execution. And interestingly enough, in the very next scene, you see Michael York and he holds up his own life clock, and you see that it is red, contrasting with what we just saw with the infant that he's looking at earlier. And Michael York does portray someone who is curious, yet at the same time, Logan, the character, is someone who believes in the society and is willing to kill to enforce the aspects of the society. And that's something I thought was interesting because the opening crawl tells us that this city and the people are reliant on servo mechanisms, and yet the actual enforcement of the society revolves around sandmen or policemen, clad in black as Michael York is here. His friend shows up, Francis Seven, who is portrayed by Richard Jordan. Richard Jordan is a wonderful actor, and his performance carries so much in this film in addition to Michael York. Really, the acting in this movie is good across the board, and it helps convey the story. Francis is Logan's best friend, and you might be wondering, well, why is he called Logan 5 and why is he called Francis 7? And the dialogue makes it clear that the infant that Logan is looking at, he thinks may be Logan 6. And Francis tells him, well, that's just insane to even think about such things. You're not supposed to concern yourself here at the nursery with who your successors may be. We're only supposed to concern ourselves with our life as it is. And brilliantly, the movie shows you what kind of society it has and what kind of system it has. And keep in mind, this is not based on any system we're familiar with. This isn't something that we have in our official history that may have inspired this science fiction tale. Yes, it was adapted from the book Logan's Run, but Logan's Run, the novel, is very different from the film. In the novel, Last Day was at the age of 21. And in the novel, people would report to what was called a sleep shop, where they would be issued this very pleasant feeling-induced gas that would kill them. And that's why the policemen were called Sandman there. Now you might say, well, it doesn't apply. Well, they could call them whatever they want to. It's a science fiction society, and I think the translation works great. Francis and Logan wander off, and we quickly get an idea of what the society looks like. We've already been introduced to the life clocks in the hands, and we also see that everybody wears clothing, outside of the Sandmen, of course, who wear their uniforms, that reflects what their life clock is. So you have the children wearing yellow, you have teens and young adults wearing green, and then you have those in their early 20s to 30 wearing red. And so it's interesting how it introduces those stratifications in society. And of course, one of the reasons that I glossed over the themes of Logan's Run from our mainstream Wikipedia article is because I believe that they try to introduce themes that reflect social issues at the time when the movie was made, and of course their unyielding attempts to introduce current social issues into a movie that was made over 40 years ago, which I think they always try to do because they want to keep us debating the same issues. In any event, I don't believe any of that's depicted in this movie. I believe this is a depiction of a true fantastical society that may have existed and may not have existed. And what's interesting is when we see this society, everything seems to be laid out like a giant mall on the inside. So some people say that reflects consumerism society, although they did a good job of finding large locations to film this that were actually indoors. I want to point out the hand here, and the hand with the life clock in the middle of it. You have an entire society. Every aspect of that society is built around the belief that you are born and you die at age 30. You have to face carousel if you're going to live past age 30 for the prospect of renewal. And we'll get to that. As Logan and Francis move through the crowded area, again, you see more examples of the clothing that people are wearing, and you only see the primary colors. There might be a couple different shades, but everything reflects the primary colors. It's very easy to tell who's who and what's what. And there's an interesting scene where Francis encounters a person wearing red and bumps into him, and they share a very aggressive look, and the gentleman moves off, and then Francis, with Richard Jordan in full aggressive mode, says, "That red's gonna run. I know it." Now, we're not exactly sure what that means in the film yet, although we have an idea. It means that this is somebody who's not going to accept the fact that they have to report to carousel for the last day at the age of 30. But just keep in mind that this entire exposition, including the title card, took about 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes, they have conveyed what the society is, what the situation is, given us an idea of who the two main characters are, and done all of this in a short amount of time. That is efficient filmmaking, and it's brilliant world building, all in 3 minutes. Very impressive. As they move to the carousel, again, we see large groups of people, and it gives you the idea of, while the city may be a hedonistic pleasure dome, there are a lot of people within it, and everybody's under the age of 30. And again, we see the symbolism, the life clock reflected here on the wall. It gives you the idea that as these people go about their lives, They're really faced with no challenges, and everything revolves around this simple belief system. And there's really nothing else. You live life to enjoy it and take all the pleasure that you can, and you know that last day is going to come at the age of 30. Now, it should be noted there's some deleted scenes here where both Logan and Francis come across a woman who's in red who is going to report to Carousel. And she says, well, I'm either going to be renewed or I'm not going to make it. And if I don't make it, well, at least I'll have a nice fiery demise. So you see how this entire population is conditioned to accept the situation as it is, and they seem to be somewhat familiar with what it is. Although, what does Carousel offer? And we'll get to that in a second. So the crowd files into the Carousel Arena, and it's an amazing set. And keep in mind, this was all done with practical effects. This movie came out in 1976 and was made before 1976. It preceded Star Wars even. And they used a lot of practical effects, and it gives the film a very realistic feeling. And what's Carousel all about? Well, as Logan and Francis sit down, they talk about who the seed mother of Logan's child may have been. And Logan looks over across the arena, sees three ladies, and says, well, it may have been one of them. And you just get the idea this reflects the whole hedonism concept of the society, because there's really no social responsibility. The computer handles everything. You can pretty much do what you want to. You know, there seem to be very, very limited laws. Basically, as long as you don't inflict physical harm on anybody, you can do as you like, and there's no consequences or repercussions. Now, people would say, well, that's a reflection of the counterculture response in the 1970s. I don't think so. I think really what they were depicting here was what the society could look like and how this would be appealing to people. You just allow them to enjoy their lives and think about nothing else, and that's what they're going to care about. Just focus on the carrot, and then you just have one stick, which in this society is the carousel. And we see individuals walk into the carousel and line up around it, and they're all wearing very ominous-looking white robes, and line up around, again, the symbol, the ultimate symbol of the life clock. Well, what's the carousel all about, we're all wondering. And they hold up their hands as the city computer announces the year of the city 2274, and Capricorn 6s from 2244, so verifies that they're 30 years old. And also interesting that it's still using classic astrological signs to mark the calendar, and that's the city computer that announces this. Well, all these individuals hold up their hands and they show the blinking red life clocks, indicating that they are on their last day and they must report to Carousel. Once showing their hands, the carousel shows a force field that seems to go down and surround them, and then they pull off their robes, revealing these very, very interesting suits that they're wearing, skin tight with flames on them, and this is going to be their chance to renewal. Well, what exactly does this involve? Well, the force field seems to turn off gravity for that area, and the people begin floating up to the ceiling. And all of a sudden, the crowd just goes crazy. Everyone's shouting, renewal, renewal, and you're trying to figure out exactly what this is all about. And they continue to float higher and higher to the ceiling, and the crowd gets more excited, more crazy. And it's an amazing ritual, and there are many different scenes that show these individuals slowly floating to the ceiling, and you're still trying to figure out, okay, what's this renewal about? Do they have to get to the ceiling? Well, suddenly you start seeing people randomly vaporize. And you realize that they're just being systematically killed, and very quickly. And yet the crowd, its fervor increases immensely, and they cheer louder and louder. Well, Logan is interrupted because he gets a report that one of the individuals, who was a Capricorn 6, born in the year of the city 2244, did not report to Carousel. And so he and Francis pursue him. And it's interesting that when they pursue them, they treat it as though it's... quite frankly, somebody hunting someone who's unarmed, which this gentleman is unarmed that they hunt down. Of course, he's wearing red, and Logan and Francis toy with him, just shooting at him probably for about 3 minutes, and finally Francis picks him off with a shot, and it kills him. And it shows you that this is what they view as their society. And Francis says to Logan once they kill this gentleman, well, look at it now. He could have renewed on Carousel, and now he's finished forever. Why would they run? I don't know. So here in the opening scenes of the movie, you've seen everything from life to death, and you understand the main premises behind the society in the city. You also understand how all the people that live in the city are conditioned that this is their reality. There's nothing outside of it, nor should they consider it. And this is the unfortunate gentleman as Logan's just toying with him. And once he's killed, Logan searches him and finds in his hand what appears to be an Ankh symbol. Now, people may not be familiar with that symbol. They may be familiar with the symbol. The film makes it very clear for how it applies. In any event, the body is quickly sprayed by someone operating some sort of machine, and the body disintegrates, and it's like it was never there. And so you see the aspects of the society: report to carousel and hope you'll renew. And it's interesting because it doesn't make it clear what renewal actually is. Does everybody get blasted, and do these people believe that they're just reincarnated into a new child? And that seems to be what they think. Although maybe the promise is if you reach the top of the carousel without getting blasted, then you renew. It's not clear. And yet I think that works because it's not supposed to be clear to these people what renewal actually is. They just believe in it, and that's why they'll report to carousel. And, if you don't make it in the deleted scene, as the woman said, well, at least you'll get a fiery end, and it's just going to be the thrill of a lifetime. Logan and Francis are just delighted with themselves and their handiwork. And in the evening, Logan decides it's time to relax. And so they have this interesting scene where he goes on this transmitter and basically he can find people who put themselves up on it. It's kind of an early concept of social media. Think of dating sites, only you can, instead of just swiping left, you swipe left and bam, you can pick the person and you've got your companion for the evening. Well, he finds this charming young lady, Jessica 6, portrayed by Jenny Agutter. Jenny Agutter is a brilliant actress, and her performance in this movie reflects so many different aspects because she's really the first person that Logan meets who has the creative and inspired mind to question the system. And in their opening conversation that they have when he meets her, she makes it very clear that the whole reason she put herself up on this social media in-person system for random hookups in the evening was because she felt bad that one of her friends died on Carousel. And she said that her friend died. And Logan says, why do you use that word? Died, killed. Nobody dies. Nobody's killed. Sandmen terminate runners. I don't kill anybody. And so the conversation makes it very clear, the first aspect, that there is a portion of the society that wants to diverge from what it's told and what its fundamental beliefs are. And Jessica represents that very well. And of course, you see what she's wearing, what her potential age is, although it doesn't make it clear. She rebuffs Logan's advances very handily and says that it was a mistake that she put herself up on the social media dating platform for random hookups, and that it was a mistake. Logan is a little disappointed, but he's not too upset because he knows he can just go back and find somebody else who's more willing to engage in nocturnal activities. Logan and Francis report to Sandman headquarters, which is co-located with the central building where the city computer is located. And we see a couple Sandmen watching this map depiction, and it shows a Sandman terminating a runner right here. And of course, they repeat the dialogue. Why do they run? I don't know. They're done forever. So again, reinforcing the notion that this is what the Sandmen believe, and they gleefully go about their duty in terminating anybody who does not report to Carousel. Terminating, death, die. They play with words. Everything is brought up in this movie, and it's amazing. Well, Logan reports to his debriefing after Francis debriefs, and Francis puts some items on the desk. They vanish, and Francis is sent on his merry way. Well, when Logan puts the items on the desk, he gets a different response from the city computer, and he is asked to sit down and identify himself by putting his life clock in his left hand on the scanner on the chair. And the computer says, identify. The computer recognizes the object as an Ankh, and it informs Logan that this device, this symbol, is related to a term called sanctuary. And Logan says he's unfamiliar with the word Ankh, and he's totally unfamiliar with the word sanctuary. And the computer lets him know that sanctuary was a pre-catastrophe word for a place of safety. And Logan is just utterly baffled by this. And he wants to ask a question, but the computer cuts him off by telling him that there are 1,056 unaccounted for runners. And Logan is just totally mystified by this. He doesn't see how it's possible. Believing that the Central City computer is totally infallible, it's the only existence he knows, he asks the question, well, maybe some of them renewed. Maybe none of them are runners. They renewed on Carousel. Well, he starts to grow more concerned when the computer responds to him that, no, the number is correct. And then lets slip by not confirming that no one has been renewed. Now, someone may ask the question, wait a minute, why would the computer tell Logan that no one has been renewed? Well, there's two reasons for it. The computer's about to send Logan on a special mission. And remember that this computer is a program. It does not have true intelligence. It is not dynamic. It can only operate within its program. and it seems that the central prime directive of its program is to maintain the society of the city at any cost. But it does understand basic human nature to some extent that's clearly been programmed, and it understands that if it reveals the truth to Logan that no one's been renewed, what's he going to do? Go tell the entire population of the city? Is anybody going to believe him? Are the other Sandmen going to believe him? Absolutely not. So keep that in mind. It's not a plot hole. It actually makes perfect sense if you factor in what the computer's prime directive is, and the fact that if there's one person, only one person who has a truth in an entire society that's been conditioned to believe a different truth their entire lives, are they going to believe him? Yeah, like I said, this movie has everything in it. It's pretty amazing. Logan grows more concerned, realizing that there is no renewal, and the computer clarifies for him the question has been answered. No one has renewed. Logan now understands, to his dread, that life will end at 30. And he's 26. He's only got 4 years left. And Michael York plays the scene very brilliantly with his facial expressions alone. You see someone go from being confident, calm, and collected to realizing that the situation and their entire life understanding is different than they knew. His life is going to be over at 30, and there's no way around it. Well, then the computer puts up procedure 033-03. No, I'm not making that up. There's a screenshot from the movie. That's the number. And Logan is completely baffled as to what this procedure is. Well, the computer explains to him that he is authorized to penetrate city seals, go outside the city, and find this sanctuary where these 1,000 unaccounted for runners are supposedly hiding. And Logan asks, well, I'm only I think he said red 6. How am I going to pretend like I'm approaching last day? Well, then you see this very ominous word, retrogram. Put your life clock on the scanner. He puts his hand on the scanner, retrogram complete, and all of a sudden, he realizes he's flashing red. And it's now last day. And again, Michael York plays it brilliantly with his facial expressions alone. He is now approaching last day. The next run of the carousel next month, he must report, and now he knows there is no renewal. And the computer says he must run, he must find sanctuary. He says, well, what if I need additional help from Sandmen? And the computer says, nope, this is a solo mission. You have to do this on your own. And Michael York says, well, I'm only a red 6. I'm not supposed to report to carousel for 4 more years. Do I get my 4 years back? Naturally, the computer does not answer him and sends him on his way, leaving him confused and scared, as it no doubt intended. Well, now that this is the situation, Logan looks up Jessica because he remembers that Jessica has this mentality that she supports this runner society, this counterculture that exists within the city, and she might have some information. And he has no choice but to carry out his mission. And when he summons Jessica back to his room, he shows her and she says, well, why show me? And he says, because I'm going to run. And she says, well, I thought you were all into terminating people. And all of a sudden he says, no, it's my life. It's me. It's different. Don't you understand? It's quite interesting. And you got to give him credit because it doesn't really portray Logan as being a sympathetic character at all. He's still a Sandman. He still does what he's supposed to do. And even at this point, he hasn't made the jump or the leap in how the world situation, his world understanding, is different than what it really is. He's shocked, he's scared, but he still has a fundamental belief in what he's doing. Well, Logan and Jessica go into the main area, and they receive a call that there's a runner that's hiding out in an area called Citadel, which seems to be an area where they have juvenile delinquents confined in the city. And there's a little conflict between Logan and the juvenile delinquents, and Logan scares them off by firing his weapon. And we find out that there seem to be limited aspects within the city that control the society, but one of the fascinating things is the leader of this little juvenile gang says that he's reaching an age, and Logan threatens him by saying, you're not going to be allowed to be in Citadel. You're going to be going back out to the city, and you're going to have to live by city rules. So quite fascinating that they work that in there. Logan and Jessica find the runner, and of course she's wearing red, and you can see, I didn't get this actor's name, but she portrays this role very well with the fear, and she tries to assure Logan, I'm not approaching last day, I'm only 22, it's a mistake. She's frightened, but Logan reassures her that he's going to run too. And yet this conversation is watched by Francis in the distance, who's followed Logan. So Francis doesn't know about the mission, and yet he follows Logan out of a sense of friendship and loyalty. So while Francis is depicted as a brutal character who is very much indoctrinated with the system of the city, he does have some redeeming qualities. His friendship and his personal loyalty to Logan is depicted through the movie. And again, I think Richard Jordan does a great job of portraying these conflicting characteristics and making it seem very believable. His expression alone sells what his intention is. Well, Logan shows the Ankh. He shows the fact that he's blinking red too and approaching last day, so he's going to run, so therefore he is not going to kill her, and even gives her a little gas pellet that can help her escape if she's cornered by other Sandmen. Well, Logan and Jessica go on their way. Francis comes up, finds the woman, and quickly executes her without hesitation. And again, the expression on Richard Jordan's face. You see that this is a stone-cold killer, yet at the same time, someone who's still a human being. A remarkable dichotomy portrayed in the movie by Richard Jordan. He reports the kill, termination, without any hesitation. And Logan and Jessica decide it's time for Logan to go and get a face change, because he became aware of this when the runner that he killed earlier in the film had a different face than what was on city records. So they report to the doctor here, and Logan's going to get a face change. And the doctor is close to 30 himself, but he looks like he's in his early 20s. And it should be noted that in the plot of the novel, Francis, Logan's best friend, was different because he was actually well into his late 30s and had used plastic surgery to appear to be younger than 21. So I think they found the whole concept of 21 and younger being a little difficult to portray in the film. It should be noted that actor Richard Jordan was in his late 30s. I think he was 37, 38 when he portrayed Francis, who couldn't have been older than 30. But, not all of us can have Richard Jordan's great genetics, I guess. Well, it turns out that the face, or the plastic surgeon or laser surgeon, or whatever you want to call him, the facial reconstruction gentleman, is actually on the side of the runners, and they realize that Logan is potentially coming after them, so he has orders to kill Logan. In a brief struggle, Logan manages to kill him, and it should be noted that Farrah Fawcett has an early role as the assistant Holly here. Well, Logan and Jessica escape, and Francis is in hot pursuit. Francis comes across Art Garfunkel and interrogates him about their whereabouts, but Art Garfunkel didn't see what direction they went, so Francis tells him never to sing Sound of Silence again and sends him on his way. Logan and Jessica escape through a very bizarre sequence where they go to what seems to be some sort of pleasure house. It doesn't really add anything to the plot, but it does reinforce the hedonistic nature of the city. Logan is surrounded by runners with what appear to be some sort of energy pikes and hold him at bay. He shows that he's flashing red, that he's going to run, and they say a Sandman never runs. Well, he clarifies, I'm going to run, and they send him on their way. Yet it should be noted that Logan did send a signal to the Sandmen, and people ask, well, wait a minute, why is Logan doing this? Because Logan still believes that he is on an official mission. He still believes in the computer. He still believes in the society that he's in. So he signals the Sandmen to find this group of runners. He thinks this is his mission right here. And so the Sandmen break in, assault the location, and begin terminating all the runners who don't stand a chance against them. It should be noted, though, that in this scene, that when one of the Sandmen threatens what is either Logan or Jessica, he quickly pulls out his weapon and kills the Sandman. This is really the first action that Logan takes that shows that he has an entirely different perspective. It's really the first major event that shows that he is changing what his belief system is. Now, you could say, well, it's because he had no choice, he was going to be killed, but the Sandman very likely wouldn't have shot him since he was wearing the same uniform, but he did stop Jessica from being killed. So it's quite fascinating to consider those aspects, how he's suddenly developing a little bit of a connection with Jessica. And remember, that's something else that should be considered in the film. Relationships are purely physical. There's not supposed to be any more of a personal connection that people feel with each other. The city and its society have deprived people of that. And yet it's the very premise of that connection that very likely causes Logan to take this extreme action. Well, as they're escaping the situation, Logan encounters Francis through a little fence area, and Francis says, hey, Logan, I could have reported you, but I didn't. I'm your friend. I understand. We all go crazy once in a while. But you have to kill her. He's referring to Jessica. You have to kill her. Well, Logan refuses to comply, and he takes a few warning shots at Francis, ensuring not to hit him but scare him off, which he succeeds. Well, Logan and Jessica escape using the Ankh as a key to a lift that leads them to the periphery of the city and then back to the surface, although it's not exactly clear because the domes are on the surface, so perhaps this is just one of the early access points. And they encounter this character, Box, a very shiny robot voiced by Roscoe Lee Brown. The performance that Roscoe Lee Brown gives is quite brilliant because he manages to show that Box is both a robot that operates on a program, and yet it's clearly operating way beyond the bounds of its programming. Because the robot says, well, I was put here to freeze all the food for the city, fish, protein, plankton from the sea, etc. And in the conversation with Box, Logan believes that Box knows where Sanctuary is. And finally, the robot, tells Logan, yes, I'll show you where Sanctuary is. Yes, we'll show you. And Box shows what's happened to the 1,000 unaccounted for runners. They've all been frozen. So there really is no escape for anybody. He says, once the supplies stopped coming, the runners started coming, and then I froze them. And that's my job. And Box whips out his freeze gun, and he's prepared to do the same thing to Logan and Jessica. But fortunately, Logan is armed with his Sandman standard issue pistol, and he resists Box, enabling him to damage Box, and then they escape as the entire cave collapses on Box. And then there's this brilliant scene where Logan and Jessica see the sun for the first time. And you have to wonder if anybody else has ever been through this situation. It's a recurring theme that you see in post-apocalyptic movies where people have lived underground for such a long time they encounter the sun for the first time. And Michael York portrays it very well, as does Jenny Agutter. Well, it's warm. Let's move towards it. They take a little swim together, and Jessica realizes that their life clocks are no longer operational, that they're crystal clear and they're free. And they take joy in that. And also you see the development of their personal relationship. They're no longer just a couple people who are just looking for a physical hookup. They've been through some situations together. They've developed some trust. And you also see that this continues the journey for Logan. That started really when he shot the Sandman, but now that he's encountered Box, now that he's seen the sun in the outside world, he's making that leap. It should be noted, though, that at the start of the movie made it very clear that Logan's character did have the ability to embrace some creativity and imagination. Francis, on the other hand, did not. Francis was committed to the system no matter what. And there's a scene where Francis follows them and sees the sun for the first time as he gets out of the city, and he seems completely bewildered and not sure what to make of it. Well, now they wander into what's very clearly the ruins to us of Washington, D.C., and you see the Washington Monument, and of course they have no idea what it's all about or what it suggests. And it's interesting to think about this when we think about our own explorations of looking at buildings that we can't explain. Well, this is the situation that they come across, and this is what they're facing, and they really don't have any idea what it's all about or what these structures could possibly represent. Just wanted to point out the fact that they do a very good job of blending what are either sets or actual houses with matte paintings, and it gives you an idea of a real sense of scale. And if you watch the movie, you see that when they ascend the stairs of the U.S. Capitol into the Senate chamber, which is where they meet the old man, it's quite very well done, and it really gives you the sense of awe and wonder that both Logan and Jessica are encountering. Well, here's where they meet Peter Ustinov, who plays the old man, unnamed. And the old man is all that remains of the old world society. Yes, I know that seems a little cliche, but if you think about it, he's the only connection that Logan and Jessica have to the society because he seems to be the only survivor who's left. And he relates to them what happened. And he doesn't really have a lot of clues or ideas. You don't know really how many generations it's been since the cataclysms occurred. He doesn't know what's happened to other people. All he knows about is his parents and that he buried them when they died. And that's really about it. And you think about that and that kind of separation. Now, this isn't a guy who's lived under any sort of controlled system. He's simply gone through the human lifespan where he's reliant on his memories and all he has to go off of is what other people have told him. Now, he does have some very scattered knowledge about what Washington, D.C. used to be and even about what the United States used to be. But it's very limited. And really all he has is just, some certain statements. Well, this guy never told a lie, supposedly. And, really you see how it's descended into myth. And it gives you the idea for how certain things that we consider myth could have potentially once been fact. It's very brilliantly depicted. I'm not always the greatest fan of Peter Ustinov, and I apologize to any of my viewers who are a fan of him, but he had a very interesting life where he hosted Nuclear Nightmares in 1980, and that started our obsession with nuclear scare films in the 1980s. And then later, he was president of the World Federalist Movement from, I think it was 1991 to his death. And the World Federalist Movement was a non-governmental organization that was a proponent of a worldwide governmental organization. So take that for what it is. Look, if there's ever anything annoying about him, just go watch The Great Muppet Caper and you can see Miss Piggy toss him out of his truck into a pile of garbage next to Oscar the Grouch. No joke, it really happened. So he gives them the background on what's going on with civilization as well as he understands it and what happened to it and why it's all ruins. And again, it's scattered information, it's very well written, and it feels very real, what he's conveying. Well, Francis finally catches up with Logan and Jessica and engages in a hand-to-hand fight with Logan. And Francis, very well played again by Richard Jordan, clearly seems to be physically superior and more skilled than Logan. And a couple times it seems as though he almost has Logan done for. Logan's just barely able to hold him off. And interestingly enough, Francis grabs the flagpole behind him that still has a US flag on it, no less, and attempts to strangle Logan with it. Well, Logan's finally able to turn the tables on Francis and then beats him to death with the flagpole. And as Francis lays dying, Logan tries to comfort him, and Francis sees the life crystal in Logan's hand that's clear. And what's Francis's thought? Well, his thought is, Logan, you're renewed. And he dies in comfort, and Richard Jordan plays it brilliantly, because he's had no arc. He has lived and died in the system imposed upon him by the city. He believes in renewal and carousel. And despite all the things he's seen, the sun, the ruins outside, the indication, the fact that there is another world beyond the city, he does not believe it. He does not grasp it, and he cannot leap from the confines, from the constraints that were imposed upon him from birth by that city. And it's an amazing portrayal. So Francis is not only a great character in this movie, he also represents a segment of society that does not want to see things outside of what they've already been told. And a lot of credit has to be given to Richard Jordan, because this scene is touching at the same time. You feel bad for Francis for a variety of reasons, but you also understand why Logan did what he had to do. He had no choice. So at this point, Logan and Jessica realize that they have to return to the city because there are millions of people who are facing death on Carousel and they don't have to die. Meeting the old man is proof that someone can live well beyond 30. And they take the old man with him because he's never really met anybody. The only human contact he's had outside of Logan and Jessica appear to be his parents, and there's really nobody else. So he accompanies them, but to get back in the city, they have to go through this interesting water exchange system, and he has to wait. And Logan and Jessica say, "We'll bring the people to you." So Logan goes back in the city with Jessica just as another scheduled occurrence of Carousel is happening. And Logan is quickly captured by the Sandmen and brought to the computer for an interrogation. And this is where you get the famous scene where the computer interrogates Logan and he says, "There is no sanctuary, all ruins, all frozen." The ultimate irony I thought about watching this scene is that the computer had sent Logan to find the runners, the 1,000 runners who had gotten away, and it turned out that Box had already frozen them all. So in the end, no runners had actually escaped. The computer had initiated this mission all on poor information. So again, it's another indication that computers only operate with programs, and they're not capable of dynamic or creative thought. They're very useful tools, but we give them inputs, and they give us outputs. They are incapable of making decisions and responding to a situation dynamically. And this is brilliantly shown in this movie. The computer cannot accept what it draws from Logan's mind. It interrogates him. It's unacceptable. And finally, the computer has a malfunction, and Logan breaks free from his restraints, and he begins fighting with the Sandman, grabbing his weapon. Now, it should be noted that everybody thought, and when they watched this movie, that the fact that the computer couldn't accept what it got from Logan's mind is what caused it to be destroyed. Well, that's not true. Logan actually gets the idea when a Sandman tries to shoot him and misses that it hits what seems to be one of the main data banks or a central processing unit potentially of this amazing computer. And he shoots it himself. Blink and you'll miss it. It's very fast, but it does happen, and that's why I included a screenshot of it. So Logan realizes that this computer system is controlling them and it offers them nothing as human beings, and he decides to destroy it based on what he's learned. This is really the completion of his arc. Logan is now willing to live outside of the world imposed upon him by the city. Jessica's already achieved this freedom much earlier in the movie, but now Logan joins her. Well, the city central computer is destroyed, and this opens up the major gateways to the city. Now, it's not really depicted in the movie, but you can draw the inferences from what you see. And the main building and the computer on top of it is destroyed. The city opens up, and the people come out, and they come across the old man. And they see that it is possible to live beyond 30 for the first time. And it's a very interesting scene where they're just all simply looking at the old man, just shocked at what it means to be old and that there is life beyond 30, because this is completely outside not only the experience but the belief system of all the people that have lived in the city their entire lives. And the movie ends, and it's interesting because this wonderful scene of Logan and Jessica together is superimposed with scenes of the interior of the city being destroyed. Now, how does Logan's Run connect to the old world in Tartaria, potentially, and the explorations that we've been doing? So what conclusions and connections can we draw from Logan's Run concerning the old world in Tartaria? Well, there are several that are depicted in the movie. And let's start first and foremost with resets. There are two very clear resets in this movie. There's the war and overpopulation, supposedly, and then there's another reset when the city computer is destroyed and they escaped. This depicts a controlled society, a society that everything is controlled from birth to death, and yet you can live a hedonistic lifestyle. However, this control is dependent upon consent. It requires consent from people. If all the people decided not to adhere to the control, report to Carousel, or enforce reporting to Carousel, the society would collapse overnight. It features character journeys. Some people are already capable of having creativity and imagination, such as Jessica. Logan has to go on a journey to get there, and Francis is unable to get there, despite having strong character qualities in and of himself. It depicts a domed city, something that comes up quite a bit in many theories of reset in previous civilizations. It shows the ruins of Washington, D.C. being non-understood. It does not depict any limitations in language because the old man that they encounter still speaks the same language, which is quite remarkable. And finally, it shows recursion loops. Wait a minute, what are recursion loops? Well, recursion loops are something any of us can be stuck in our lives, and we have to be aware of them. We can become stuck on anything, whether it's sports or even these kind of studies. That's why we have to continue to ask questions and continue to expand and broaden ourselves. This film is a warning of that. And in total, I think that shows Old World and Tartaria in the movies. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this exploration of Logan's Run. Remember, ask questions, explore yourself, and you'll restore the world. Please like, comment, and subscribe.